Okay, is anyone else still kind of like mentally wading through leftover Halloween candy? Meanwhile, the rest of the world's already like full-on Mariah Carey mode. It's nuts.
It is a bit of a whiplash, isn't it?
Right. Like we're all supposed to magically transform into these like holiday baking, Pinterest perfect parents overnight. But what about those little humans who don't quite get the memo on that whole warp speed transition?
Yeah, they don't exactly operate on the same timeline as holiday marketing campaigns.
And that's precisely why we're doing this deep dive into parenting during the holidays, managing expectations, and avoiding meltdowns. You know, we got our hands on this guide, and it's all about finding a smoother, happier holiday path for everyone. So we figured, let's unpack it, right?
Yeah.
Especially that whole thing about why this time of year can basically be like meltdown central for kids, and hopefully what we can actually do about it.
Yeah, it's like this hidden stressor that we don't always talk about.
Right. Like we as parents get it, the holidays can be a lot. But we often forget that kids are experiencing all of that times 10.
For sure. And without the same coping mechanisms we've hopefully developed over the years.
Exactly. And this guide really digs into the why of that. And sensory overload, oh my gosh, that's a big one, right?
Huge. Think about it.
It's like decorations, music, excited relatives, parties. Like, it's enough to make me want to crawl under a rock and hide until January.
Seriously.
Let alone a little kid.
Right. And they're still developing those filters. It's like, imagine being on a busy city street, right? At night, lights are flashing, sirens going
I
off.
can't even.
And everyone's rushing around you.
Yeah.
Now, bottle that feeling,
Yeah.
but without the ability to fully process it, right?
Wow. Yeah.
That's often what sensory overload feels like for them from their perspective.
That is such a powerful visual. No wonder something like even a Christmas tree can be completely overwhelming to a little one.
Right. And then you layer on top of that
Oh, and it doesn't stop there.
all the disrupted routines.
Right. Bedtimes are later. They're eating different foods, traveling. It's like their whole world is turned upside down when for kids, predictability is like their jam.
Totally. We crave that as adults, but for them, it's even more essential.
Absolutely. It's like we're pulling the rug out from under them, but then we're like, wait, why are you freaking out?
Precisely. We might complain about holiday stress, but we have ways of managing it.
We
Right.
do, to some extent at least.
Right, exactly. Kids are still learning how to even identify those feelings, let alone
No.
cope with them.
Totally. It's like, oh, you're feeling overwhelmed. Here's a breathing exercise and a glass of wine. You'll be fine. They can't exactly do that.
Not quite.
Okay, but then there's this whole other layer of like the pressure cooker of expectations. We're all bombarded with these like Hallmark movie images of, perfect decorations, mountains of presents, and everyone's just so darn cheerful. And kids pick up on that, right?
Oh, for sure. And they haven't quite figured out that those are commercials and they're trying to sell you something. It's not real life.
Exactly. It's all smoke and mirrors and perfectly placed twinkle lights. But kids are taking it in as this is what the holidays are supposed to look like.
Right?
Which is why this whole idea from the guide about having pre-holiday gift conversations really stuck with me.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because, it's so tempting to just like avoid the topic altogether, right? Like, let's keep the magic alive. We don't need to talk about what you're getting for Christmas in October. But this guide actually suggests the opposite.
Yeah, sometimes a little honesty up front can save you a lot of headaches later on.
Right, like
Yeah.
full-on meltdown on Christmas morning because, surprise, Santa didn't bring the life-sized pony.
Exactly. And it's not about being a Grinch and saying no to everything,
Yeah.
but it's about having that open communication.
Yeah, and like the guide says, you can make it age-appropriate, right?
Of course.
Like, I'm not going to sit my 5-year-old down and be like, okay, let's talk about our holiday budget this year.
No, definitely not.
But maybe making a wish list and then explaining that, Santa might not bring everything on the list.
Right, exactly.
That's a good starting point.
And then for younger kids, really emphasizing the experience,
Yeah.
right? Like the joy of giving gifts, spending time with family, that kind of thing, rather than just the stuff.
Yes.
And then as they get older, that's when you start introducing the idea of a budget, maybe even having them help pick out gifts for others.
I love that.
Let them be a part of that process.
Yes. So it's not just about getting, it's about being a part of the giving, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it gets really interesting because, the guide highlights how when you involve kids in the holiday planning, even in those small ways, it actually shifts the whole dynamic, right?
Oh, interesting. In what way?
It's no longer just something that's happening to them.
Oh, right. They're
Yeah.
not just along for the ride.
They're participants.
Like, they're actually empowered.
Yeah. It gives them that sense of ownership.
So Okay, managing expectations, that's huge. But how do we actually, survive the sensory onslaught of the holidays themselves?
Right, because it's a lot.
It's a lot. And this guide, thankfully, dives into some, concrete ways to create a calmer environment for everyone. And it all starts with, no surprise here, routine.
It always comes back to routine, doesn't it?
It really does, especially with kids. I feel like if routine had a catchphrase, it would be, if mama ain't happy,
Right.
nobody's happy.
Exactly. And during the holidays, that's especially true. It's so tempting to just let everything slide because it's so chaotic.
Oh, 100%.
But this guide really stresses the importance of, even when things are crazy, try to maintain those consistent bedtimes, meal times.
Yeah.
Even just dedicated quiet time. It makes a world of difference.
It's like hitting the reset button for their little nervous system.
Exactly.
Okay, there's one thing in this guide that kind of threw me for a loop. It actually recommends limiting screen time during the holidays.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough one.
I know, right?
It seems counterintuitive.
Because it's my instinct is, oh, things are crazy, here's an iPad, go nuts.
Yeah. Distract them.
Exactly. But the guide argues that actually too much screen time, especially during this time of year, can really backfire.
And it makes sense if you think about it.
I know, right? It's
Yeah.
explain it to me like I'm not staring at my phone, but
Well, it's all about the type of stimulation.
okay, right.
So you think about those flashing lights, the constant, rapid-fire changes in imagery and sound. It's
Yeah.
like serving them a 5-course meal of sensory overload, and then we're wondering why they're bouncing off the walls.
It's true. I haven't had my coffee yet, and you're already making my brain hurt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we got to find other ways.
Right, give me some examples. What are some quiet time activities that actually work and for different ages? Because what a 2-year-old can handle and what a 10-year-old can handle are two very different things.
For sure. So, for a toddler, it might be something as simple as building a tower with blocks, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
reading a familiar book.
Yes.
It's about engaging them, but not overstimulating them.
Right. It's quiet the brain down a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, as they get older,
Yeah.
you get a little more creative. Board games are always a good one, giving them some quiet time to read on their own. And don't underestimate the power of involving them in them. Simple chores, even.
Chores. Really?
Yes.
Seriously.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I never thought of chores as a calming activity.
Well, you think about it, setting the table, helping sort laundry.
Yeah.
It gives them a sense of purpose. It can actually be very calming amidst all the chaos, right?
They feel like they have some control.
Exactly. And speaking of simplifying, right,
Oh,
because
yeah, simplify.
the guide also emphasizes simplifying the holiday schedule itself.
Yes.
We put so much pressure on ourselves
We do.
to do all the things.
Oh my gosh, the holiday. It's like a holiday activity arms race, right? Exactly. It's
Yeah.
oh, she's going to the gingerbread house making thing, so we have to, no. This guide is stop it.
It is a lot.
Choose 1 or 2 things that are truly meaningful and let go of the pressure to do it all.
It's so true. And I think this is a good time to bring up one of the most actionable, concrete tips from this guide that I absolutely loved. And it's this idea of creating a visual holiday schedule. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
So for those, because you know how little kids are, they don't really get this whole abstract concept of time, right?
Right.
Oh, in an hour we're going to go. No. But you know what they do get? Pictures.
Yes. Visuals.
Visuals. So
Yeah.
this guide talks about using pictures to actually represent different activities.
Oh, I love that. That's so smart.
So it's okay, after breakfast, we're going to see Santa. And then it's nap time.
Right, exactly.
And having that visual.
Takes the guesswork out of it for them.
Yes. It eliminates those power struggles and those, because they know what's coming.
Yes.
Yes.
And it creates that predictability that they crave.
Exactly.
So smart.
It's all about communication, but sometimes pictures really are worth 1,000 words or 1,000 meltdowns avoided. Okay, all this talk about routine and predictability, I love it, but can we talk about the elephant in the room? The one wearing the reindeer antlers and refusing to eat their mashed potatoes?
Oh, yeah. The meltdown.
The meltdowns. Because,
Wow.
let's be real, even with the best laid plans, the perfectly timed snack breaks, they're going to happen, right?
Absolutely. It's practically a parenting rite of passage, I think, especially during the holidays.
It's not if, but when, and how epic is it going to be, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how much judgment am I going to get from the the grandma in line behind me at Target.
Oh, 100%. That's the worst.
Because we've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like when your kid decides that the candy cane aisle is their own personal meltdown arena.
It's like a rite of passage.
Ah.
You're not a real parent until you've experienced that, I think.
Exactly. And this guide, thankfully, reminds us that it's not about if it happens, it's about how we respond to it.
That's the key, right?
Which is so much easier said than done, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're in it.
Especially when you're in it. It's like easier said than done when you're like, oh, I don't know, sleep deprived, hopped up on sugar cookies yourself and trying to like wrangle a tiny human who's lost their mind over a candy cane.
Right. And you're feeling that judgment from everyone around you.
The judgment is real, man.
It is.
It's like they've never seen a child have a meltdown in public before.
Right. Like, this is a new phenomenon, apparently. But this is where this guide really, I think, shines.
Yeah.
Because it reminds us, like, we have to be the grown-up.
We do.
Not just for them, but for ourselves.
Yes. It's like that airplane oxygen mask analogy.
Exactly.
You can't help anyone if you're a mess yourself.
Right. You have to regulate your own emotions first, so you can then help them co-regulate.
Okay, so, like, how do we do that? In the heat of the moment, what are some things we can actually do?
Well, the guide talks about, like, first, taking a breath yourself. Remind yourself this is temporary.
Oh, that's hard.
It is. But important.
But it's true. They're not going to be doing this when they're, like, 20, right?
Exactly. This too shall pass.
Yeah.
And then acknowledge their feelings.
Oh, that's a hard one.
It is hard. It's tempting to be like, you're fine, stop crying, but
Which never works, ever.
never works.
In the history of parenting, has that ever worked?
Never. But actually, taking the time to say, like, hey, I see you're really upset. It's okay to be upset. I'm here for you. It can, actually.
Ecto-validating for them.
Exactly. And sometimes that's all it takes to start to kind of de-escalate the situation.
Yes, just feeling heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if that's not enough, the guide also talks about the power of sometimes just removing them from the situation.
Oh, a change of scenery.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
changes scenery. Whether it's like you step outside of the store for a minute, get some fresh air.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all it takes to kind of reset. Actually, you know what I really loved? There's this anecdote in the guide about that. The author was talking about a holiday meltdown that their kid had and how they navigated it. And it was just so
Relatable.
relatable.
Because we want to know that these experts are human, too, right?
Exactly. They get it.
They get it. They live it.
They live it too, right? It wasn't like this like perfectly curated, oh, and then my child magically calmed down because I used the right words kind of thing.
Right, exactly. Because that never happens.
Never happens. But it was a good reminder that we're all human. We're all figuring this out as we go.
We are trial by fire.
Trial by fire,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about sensory overload, managing expectations, how to deal with those inevitable meltdowns. But this guide ends on a really, I think, beautiful and important note. And it's this whole idea of, like, the true magic of the holidays isn't about the gifts.
It's not about the stuff.
It's not about the piles of presents. It's about the traditions we create.
Yes. Those are the things they'll remember, right?
Exactly. Like my kids don't remember, what they got for Christmas 3 years ago.
Right.
But they do remember, baking cookies with grandma or, decorating the tree together. Like those are the memories.
Exactly. And it circles right back to that need for predictability, right? Those traditions, they provide that sense of comfort and familiarity. It's like an anchor, especially during a time that can be so chaotic.
It is. It's like their safe space, those traditions.
Exactly.
And you know what I love about traditions is that they can evolve as kids get older.
That's what's so cool about them.
It's not like, this is what we do and it's set in stone forever. Like, it can change.
Right. So you're creating new ones all the time.
Exactly. So I'm curious for you listening as you gear up for this holiday season, what's one small non-gift related tradition that you're either looking forward to or maybe one that you want to start this year? What is it that brings your family joy, that strengthens those bonds, and that reminds everyone, big and small, what this season is really all about? We hope you have a wonderful holiday season, filled with more joy than stress, more connection than chaos. Until next time, may your days be merry and bright, your coffee stay hot, and your meltdowns, well, let's just say manageable.